I am Simone, 38 years old, and my life ended 3 months ago when my husband Marcus died in a plane crash. My sister Chloe insisted I attend her son's first birthday party, saying I needed to be around family. I was still numb with grief when I arrived, but the party was not a celebration. It was an ambush. In front of 40 guests, Chloe announced that her baby, Leo, was actually Marcus's son. And, she said, looking right at me, I am demanding half of his $50 million estate. My parents just nodded, watching me. I asked, "Are you serious, Chloe?" When she smirked and said yes, I could not control it. I laughed. I laughed so hard I cried, because my husband Marcus was sterile. Before I continue this story and tell you exactly what Marcus left in his real will, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever felt betrayed by the people who should have been your biggest supporters. 3 months. It had been 3 months since the phone call that shattered my world. 3 months since my husband Marcus boarded a flight to Tokyo and never came home. I am Simone, 38 years old, and I am living in a mausoleum. Our Chicago penthouse, once vibrant and filled with his laughter, was now just quiet, cold. The floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a city that did not care he was gone. I sat on the Italian leather sofa he loved, surrounded by boxes. His boxes. Things returned from his overseas office, things from his side of the closet, things I could not bear to open. They were stacked against the walls like monuments to a life that ended too soon. I tried to work. As a landscape architect, my job was about creating life, about bringing beauty to concrete spaces. Now, I just stared at my tablet. I was supposed to be designing the new memorial park downtown. Instead, I just sketched weeping willows over and over again. My business partner kept calling, offering condolences, gently asking about timelines. I kept ignoring him. What was the point of designing parks when the only person I wanted to walk in them with was gone? The grief was a physical weight, made heavier by the isolation. My family had not been a comfort. They had been an obligation. I closed my eyes and the memory of the funeral, just 2 months ago, rushed back. It was a gray, miserable day. I stood by the grave, feeling like my own soul was being lowered into the earth. My mother Lena was there. She had not hugged me. She had gripped my arm, her nails digging in slightly. "Simone," she had whispered, while the pastor was speaking about ashes to ashes. "You need to call the probate lawyer as soon as this is over. Marcus's assets need to be secured immediately." My father, Joseph, had stood awkwardly a few feet away, talking to one of Marcus's business partners, probably networking. And my sister, Chloe, my 34-year-old sister, the golden child. She had not shed a single tear. Not one. She spent the entire graveside service texting. When I looked over, she met my gaze, offered a weak, distracted smile, and then looked back down at her phone. Later at the wake, she complained that the catering I had arranged was a bit grim. That was when I knew. I truly, fundamentally knew that my pain was mine alone. My family had not just lost a son-in-law. They had lost an asset, a connection, a status symbol. They never approved of Marcus. He was not old money. He was new tech money. He was brilliant, self-made, and successful, and they resented him for it. They resented that he had given me a life they could not control. They were a family that prized tradition and legacy, even though their own wealth was barely 2 decades old, built on my father's ruthless real estate deals, not some ancestral heritage. They much preferred Chloe's husband, Ryan, a handsome, useless white man from an old family who had not worked a day in his life. I got up from the sofa and walked to the kitchen. The $50 million estate the news had reported was mostly in stocks and intellectual property from the company Marcus built from scratch. Our home, this penthouse, was the only thing that felt truly ours. Marcus had loved it. He loved the view of the lake, the way the light hit the walls in the morning. "We're on top of the world, Simone," he used to say. Now I was just on top of a very tall, very empty building. My phone buzzed on the cold marble countertop. It was a number I did not recognize. I ignored it. It buzzed again. A text. "Pick up, Simone, it's me." I frowned. Another text. "Chloe, pick up the phone. It's important." A cold dread filled my stomach. Chloe never texted me unless she wanted something. Reluctantly, I swiped to answer the third call. "Simone!" Her voice was jarringly cheerful, like sunshine breaking into a tomb. "How are you doing? I've been so worried about you." I did not answer. "Listen," she continued, not waiting for a reply. "I know things have been awful, just awful, which is exactly why you need to get out of that apartment. You need to be around family." "What do you want, Chloe?" I asked, my voice flat. "It's Leo's first birthday next weekend," she squealed. 1 year old. Can you believe it? We're having a huge party. Everyone is coming. Mom and Dad are flying up from Atlanta. Ryan is getting a mobile zoo. You have to come, Simone. You just have to. It will be good for you to see everyone, to feel some joy again. A mobile zoo. My husband was dead, and she was talking about a mobile zoo. Every instinct screamed no. It screamed trap. But then I heard my mother's voice in the background, muffled. "Ask her again, Chloe. Tell her we insist." They were together. This was planned. "Simone, are you there? Please say you'll come." I looked at the picture of Marcus on the refrigerator. His smiling face seemed to give me a warning. But what else did I have? I was so tired of being alone. "Fine," I whispered. "I'll be there." "Wonderful," she chirped. "You won't regret it." As the line went dead, I stared at the phone. "Oh, Chloe," I said to the empty room. "I think I will." I spent Thursday morning trying to archive Marcus's digital files. His cloud storage was full of complex code, unfinished projects, and one folder labeled Us. It was filled with photos I could not bring myself to look at. The silence of the penthouse was an active, oppressive thing. I had not spoken to another human in 2 days, not since my business partner called, and I let it go straight to voicemail. I was tracing the outline of a willow tree on my tablet, the design for the memorial park, when my phone, silent for so long, buzzed violently on the cold marble countertop. I flinched. The screen read, "Chloe." A call from Chloe was never just a call. It was a request, a complaint, or a prelude to drama. I braced myself and swiped to answer. "Simone!" Her voice was high-pitched, syrupy sweet. It was the voice she used on my father when she needed money, or on store clerks when she wanted a refund for something she had already worn. It was not a voice I trusted. "Simone, I'm so worried about you," she gushed. "You keep locking yourself away in that big apartment. You have to get out." I closed my eyes, rubbing the space between them where a headache was forming. "I'm not ready, Chloe. I'm not ready." "But you have to be," she insisted, her sweetness already laced with impatience. "Listen, this weekend is Leo's first birthday. Can you believe my little man is already 1? I murmured something noncommittal. I loved my nephew, but the thought of a children's party, of forced happiness, felt like swallowing glass. "And Simone," she continued, her voice dropping into a conspiratorial, caring tone, "everyone is coming. The whole family will be there. Mom and Dad are flying up from Atlanta just for this. They really want to see you." "Ryan," she added, naming her white, perpetually unemployed husband. "Ryan also said you need to be around family right now. Please, Simone. For me, we're all so worried." This gave me pause. My parents, Joseph and Lena, flying in from Atlanta? They had not flown in for my last project opening, an event that had been featured in an architectural magazine. They had said the flights were too expensive right now. But for Leo's first birthday, they would drop everything. Of course they would. I hated these family gatherings. I hated the way my father would appraise me, his eyes scanning my clothes, my career, my life, and finding it all somehow lacking compared to his real business. I hated the way my mother would offer backhanded compliments. "Oh, Simone, another award for designing a park? That's nice. Did you hear Chloe is the new brand ambassador for that boutique downtown?" In our family, I was the smart one, the difficult one, the one who built a successful career they did not understand. Chloe was the pretty one, the charming one, the one who married a handsome man with no job and was praised for managing the household, a household funded entirely by my parents. They measured my success in degrees and publications, but they measured hers in social connections and, now, the all-important first grandchild. And yet, the loneliness in this penthouse was an actual ache in my chest. The whole family will be there. The phrase echoed in my head. Maybe Marcus's death had shocked them into a new perspective. Maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe they finally understood that life was short and that family, even this family, was all we had. It was a stupid, fragile hope. I knew it was stupid even as I was feeling it. But the grief had worn me down, made me weak, made me desperate for any sign of connection. "You need this, Simone," Chloe urged, sensing my hesitation. "We need this. We need to be together." I took a deep breath, ignoring the warning bells that were screaming in my head, the same bells that Marcus had always heard so clearly on my behalf. "He always said your sister has an angle, Simone. Be careful." But Marcus was gone. I was alone. "Okay," I said, the word costing me more than she knew. "Okay, Chloe. I'll be there." I could practically hear her smile through the phone. "Wonderful. Oh, Simone, that's the best news. You won't regret it. I'll text you the details. We'll see you Sunday at 2. She hung up before I could change my mind. I stood there, phone in hand, already regretting the decision. I had a terrible feeling about this. Miles away, in her sprawling suburban home, Chloe tossed her phone onto a white sofa and let out a triumphant laugh. Ryan walked in from the patio holding a beer. "So, is she coming?" Chloe's sweet, concerned expression was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating smirk. "Hook, line, and sinker," she said, picking at her acrylic nails. "She'll be there." "Good," Ryan said, his own smile matching hers. "Did you tell your parents the plan?" "Are you kidding?" Chloe scoffed. "They think this is just a birthday party. They'll follow my lead when the time comes. They always do. God, Simone is so predictable. Always so desperate to be loved." She stood up and walked to a large mirror, fluffing her hair. 3 months of playing the grieving, supportive sister. God, it's been exhausting. By this time next week, Simone won't know what hit her. That penthouse, those stocks, half of it is mine. I spent Sunday morning in a fog. I picked out a simple, elegant black dress. Marcus had always loved it. It felt like armor. I grabbed the gift I had ordered for Leo, a beautifully bound collection of children's art books, rare first editions. It was expensive, perhaps too sophisticated for a 1-year-old, but it was meaningful. It was a piece of my world, the world of art and design, a world my family actively ignored. I drove my modest sedan to Chloe's neighborhood in the suburbs. The drive itself felt like a betrayal of my grief, the sunny day mocking my inner state. When I pulled up to her house, my stomach tightened. It was not a party. It was a carnival. A massive, inflatable, bouncy castle in the shape of a dragon dominated the front lawn. I could hear the braying of a donkey and saw a pen set up near the garage. A petting zoo for a 1-year-old. A valet, wearing a crisp white vest, rushed toward my car. I just shook my head and parked on the street, feeling out of place before I even stepped onto the curb. The backyard was worse. At least 40 guests milled around. A bartender was serving champagne and mimosas at a fully stocked bar. Music was blaring. This was not a child's party. It was a performance. I walked through the side gate, holding the heavy gift. I spotted my mother, Lena, immediately. She was holding court near the elaborate three-tiered cake, laughing with a group of women I did not recognize. She saw me approach. Her smile tightened, just slightly, but enough for me to notice. "Oh, Simone, you made it," she said, her voice loud enough for the group to hear. She gave me a brittle, one-armed hug, her eyes scanning me from head to toe. "You look so thin. Grief doesn't suit you, dear." Before I could even respond, before I could even say hello, she turned away from me, back to her friends. "And Chloe," she gestured toward my sister, who was posing for photos by the petting zoo. "Doesn't she look absolutely radiant? Motherhood has just made her glow." I stood there holding the heavy books, feeling my face flush. I was invisible. "I brought this for Leo," I said, my voice quiet, holding out the gift. My mother barely glanced at it. "Oh, just put it on the table with the others," she said, waving her hand dismissively toward a mountain of brightly wrapped plastic toys. "Make sure you get some champagne, Simone. Try to mingle." I saw my father, Joseph, standing near the champagne bar, locked in a jovial conversation with Ryan. Ryan, Chloe's husband, looked perfectly at home in expensive linen pants and a salmon-colored polo shirt, a drink in his hand. He looked like a man who had never had a single worry, mostly because he let everyone else do the worrying for him. I walked over, bracing myself, ready to greet my father for the first time in months. "Dad?" He turned, saw me, and his smile faltered for just a second before becoming professional. "Simone, glad you could get away from your work." He clapped me on the shoulder once, a perfunctory, awkward gesture. Then he immediately turned back to Ryan, slinging an arm around his son-in-law's shoulders. "I was just telling Ryan," my father boomed, "what an amazing job he and Chloe did with this party. A+, son. Truly. Chloe has such incredible taste in planning these things." Ryan laughed. "It was all her, Joseph. I just write the checks." My father laughed too. "Well, you're a good man for supporting her vision." I just stood there. I, Simone, the actual architect, the professional designer whose work was based on taste and planning, was completely ignored. My father was praising my sister's taste for renting a donkey and praising my jobless, white brother-in-law for writing checks that were almost certainly funded by my parents. The insult was so layered, so deep, it almost made me dizzy. I tried one more time. "The memorial park I'm designing, Dad. We just got the final approval from the city commission." My father nodded, already looking past me toward the grill. "That's nice, Simone, that's nice. Oh, look, the caterers are bringing out the shrimp." He walked away mid-sentence. I retreated, moving toward the edge of the lawn. This was exactly why I never came home. It was not just that they ignored me, it was that they did it so easily. I remembered the crushing disappointment 3 years ago. I had been the keynote speaker at the Midwest Landscape Architecture Conference, a huge honor. I sent them an invitation. They replied that they couldn't make it. It was too far to travel on a weekday. 2 weeks later, they flew to New York, first class, to watch Chloe walk in an amateur fashion show for her friend's fledgling boutique. I had watched their proud Instagram posts from the front row. Now, I stood in this loud, tacky backyard, surrounded by strangers and family who treated me like one. I felt the familiar, cold sting of regret. I should not have come. I truly was an idiot. I found a single empty chair in a corner, far from the bar, far from the petting zoo, and sat down, just hoping to become invisible. I was nursing a glass of water, having lost my appetite for champagne, when the music suddenly cut off. I looked up. Chloe was standing on a small, makeshift stage near the petting zoo, tapping a champagne glass with a spoon. Ryan stood beside her, holding Leo, who was fussing and trying to grab the microphone. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" Chloe's voice boomed, artificially bright and shaky, as if she was nervous, but I knew my sister. This was not nerves. This was performance. The chatter died down. 40 pairs of eyes turned to her. My parents, Joseph and Lena, moved to the front of the small crowd, looking up at their favored daughter with proud smiles. "Thank you all so much for coming," Chloe began, placing a hand over her heart. "Today is such a big, important day. It means the world to us." She paused, her eyes sweeping the crowd, and I felt them land on me, just for a second, in my lonely corner chair. A flicker of something cold and triumphant passed over her face. "Today is not just about celebrating my sweet Leo turning 1, she continued, her voice dropping to a more serious, emotional tone. It's also it's about finally speaking the truth. It's about getting justice for my son." A confused murmur rippled through the guests. Justice? What did that mean? I saw my father frown, glancing at my mother. Ryan shifted, adjusting Leo on his hip, his expression unreadable. Chloe's eyes locked onto mine. She was no longer speaking to the crowd. She was speaking directly to me. "As you all know," she said, her voice trembling with fake emotion, "our family suffered a terrible, terrible loss 3 months ago." My breath caught in my throat. "No, don't you dare." "We lost Marcus." Her voice cracked on his name, a perfect practiced break. "A wonderful husband to my sister, a great brother-in-law to me, and," she took a deep, shuddering breath, "and a father." The silence that followed was absolute. I could hear the donkey from the petting zoo braying in the background. I felt my blood turn to ice. "Father? What is she doing?" She turned to Ryan, who handed Leo over to her. She held the baby up, almost presenting him to the crowd. "Marcus left behind a gift," she said, her voice rising. "A secret. A beautiful living legacy. My son Leo is Marcus's son." The world stopped. The gasp from the crowd was a single, sharp sound. I saw my mother's hand fly to her chest, her eyes wide with shock. My father looked stunned, but then I saw it. A flicker of something else. Calculation. His eyes darted from Chloe to Leo and then to me. I could almost see the numbers spinning behind his pupils. $50 million. Chloe was still talking, her words a-roaring in my ears. "We had an affair. It was wrong, but we were in love. He was trapped in a cold marriage. He was going to leave her. He knew about Leo. He was happy." I stood up. The chair legs scraped loudly against the stone patio, a sound like a scream in the sudden silence. Every single person turned to look at me. The grieving widow. The cold wife. Chloe's face was a mask of triumphant sorrow. She was feeding on their shock, on my humiliation. My voice came out, low and dangerous, cutting through the stunned whispers. "What the hell did you just say, Chloe?" Chloe's words hung in the hot, humid air, thick with the smell of champagne and miniature hot dogs. "He was going to be with me," she repeated, her voice full of a performer's tragic conviction. "He was tired of your spreadsheets and your blueprints, Simone. He was tired of a wife who was cold, a wife who was obsessed with her career. He wanted passion. He wanted a real family. He wanted Leo." I just stared at her. The world had gone very, very quiet. The sound of the rented donkey braying in the background seemed ridiculously loud. I could feel the eyes of 40 guests on me, a heavy, pitying weight. My mother, Lena, was looking at Chloe with a strange, horrified sympathy. My father, Joseph, was looking at me, his expression entirely unreadable, calculating. Chloe, sensing the dramatic climax, took a deep breath. She pulled herself up to her full height, a grieving mother demanding justice. "And now," she said, her voice dropping, "he is gone, and I am left to raise his only heir alone. So, as the mother of Marcus's son, I am formally demanding what is rightfully ours, $25 million, half of his $50 million estate. For my son." The silence that followed was absolute. It was a vacuum. Even the music seemed to have stopped. Ryan, her useless husband, stood beside her, nodding grimly, a supportive prop in her ridiculous play. My mother took a half step toward Chloe, her hand outstretched. My father cleared his throat, as if preparing to mediate, to manage the situation. And in that perfect, terrible silence, a sound bubbled up from my chest. It started as a small puff of air, a gasp. Then it became a chuckle. It was a dry, dark sound that surprised even me. The guests shifted, looking at each other, confused. Chloe's brow furrowed. "What's so funny?" she snapped. But the chuckle was building. It turned into a real laugh. It was loud and sharp and completely out of place. It was the laugh of someone who had just heard the most absurd, idiotic joke in the world. I clutched my stomach, bending over slightly as the laughter turned into a full-blown, hysterical fit. Tears, the first real tears since the funeral, streamed down my face. But they were not tears of grief. They were tears of pure, unadulterated scorn. "Stop it!" Chloe shrieked, her performance shattering. "What are you laughing at? Are you insane? My son just lost his father and you're laughing?" "Simone, control yourself!" My father's voice was a sharp command. "This is disgraceful!" I really tried to stop. I held up a hand, gasping for air. "I'm sorry," I wheezed. "I'm sorry. It's just—" I took another shuddering breath, trying to control the fit. "It's just— You are," I pointed a trembling finger at Chloe. "You are the stupidest, most pathetic, worst liar I have ever met in my entire life." The color drained from her face. "How dare you? I have proof. I have a—" "What do you have, Chloe?" I interrupted, my voice suddenly as cold and sharp as glass. The laughter was gone, every trace of it. "What? Fake love letters? A photoshopped picture? Let me guess, you don't have a DNA test, do you? Because you know exactly what it would show, and you know Ryan knows it too." Ryan, who had been standing there looking smug, suddenly looked like he'd been struck by lightning. "I'm laughing," I said, stepping forward, "because you built this entire, desperate, pathetic fantasy on a foundation of complete and total ignorance. I am laughing because you are trying to steal $50 million based on a biological impossibility." "It's not impossible," Chloe screamed, her voice cracking. "Marcus loved me." "Oh, but it is, Chloe." I took another step. The crowd parted around me. "You see, 5 years ago, after Marcus and I decided that our life together, just the two of us, was everything we ever wanted, after we discussed the genetic heart condition in his family that he refused to pass on, my husband Marcus had a vasectomy." A new, sharper gasp rippled through the party. My mother whispered, "No." I smiled, a thin, terrible smile. "He was sterile, Chloe. Completely, irreversibly. And I tapped the designer handbag Marcus had bought me for our last anniversary. I have every single medical record, every follow-up lab result, every doctor's statement, all of them signed, dated, and notarized right here in my bag, just waiting for a desperate, greedy, stupid liar like you to show up." Chloe's face was not just pale, it was white. Chalk. She stumbled back a step, her eyes wide with pure animal panic. She looked wildly at Ryan, who looked like he was going to be sick. The party was in absolute chaos. The air in the backyard crackled with a new, dangerous energy. Chloe, who had been frozen in panic just a moment before, seemed to catch her breath. The guests were whispering, a low, intense buzz as they turned to stare at Chloe, then at Ryan, then back at me. Ryan, her husband, who had been standing there pale and useless, suddenly turned a deep, blotchy red. He stepped forward, putting a protective arm around Chloe, who looked as if she was about to faint. "She's lying," he shouted, his voice cracking with a poor attempt at righteous anger. "She is a cruel, vindictive, jealous woman. She's lying." I just watched him, my face calm. The storm inside me had settled into a cold, hard certainty. "It's a medical record, Ryan. It's not something you can just lie about." "Of course you can," he spat, his desperation making him reckless. You'd do anything to keep the money for yourself. You'd fake anything. You were always jealous of Chloe. Everyone knows it. You couldn't stand that she was happy that she had a child. You probably faked those records yourself, paid off some doctor. He was grasping, throwing anything at the wall, hoping something would stick. He pointed a shaking finger at me. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what fake papers you have, because we have the truth. We have his words. He lunged toward the gift table, shoving aside the brightly colored plastic toys and my unopened, expensive art books. He grabbed a large manila envelope from under a pile of wrapping paper. "We didn't want to do this," he said, his voice dripping with false righteousness. "We wanted to be civil, but you forced our hand." He ripped the envelope open and pulled out a stack of papers, holding them up like a trophy for the entire party to see. "This," he announced to the horrified guests, "is Marcus's real will. His final will and testament." He walked to the center of the patio, unfolding the document. "Signed and notarized just 2 months before his accident." His voice cracked, a perfect touch of performative grief. He knew what he was doing. He wanted to protect his real family, his true family. He cleared his throat and read, his voice ringing out across the silent yard. "I, Marcus King, being of sound mind, do hereby leave 50%, 1/2 of my entire estate, to be held in trust for my unborn child with Chloe Miller." The gasp from the crowd was even louder this time. This was drama. This was proof. My mother, Lena, let out a small, theatrical sob and rushed toward Chloe, pulling her into a tight, protective embrace. "Oh, my baby, she cried, stroking Chloe's hair as Chloe wept into her shoulder. "He loved you. He really loved you." Then, my mother turned and glared at me, her eyes filled with a venom I had never seen before. "Simone, how could you? How could you stand there and tell such a horrible, vicious lie about your husband, about a man who is dead? You are cruel." My father, Joseph, walked over to me. He did not yell. His voice was low and menacing, which was so much worse. "A vasectomy," he scoffed. "That is the most disgusting, desperate thing I have ever heard. You would slander your dead husband's name just to steal money from his child? From your own nephew?" "He's not my nephew," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "And he's not Marcus's son." "We have a will!" Joseph roared, pointing at the paper in Ryan's hand. "That is proof. Your medical records are trash. You've always been jealous of your sister. We all knew it. We all saw how you looked at her, how you resented her happiness. You were a bitter, childless woman, and you couldn't stand that Marcus found joy with someone else. You probably drove him to it." I looked at the paper Ryan was holding. From where I stood, I could see the signature at the bottom. It was a good forgery, very good. But it was not Marcus's. The M was too looping, too perfect. Marcus always signed his M with a hurried, sharp edge. This was a scan, a fake. I looked at my father's furious face, at my mother's tear-streaked, judgmental glare, at Chloe, who was now weeping into my mother's shoulder, the perfect wronged victim, at Ryan, who looked triumphant, having saved the day. I was outnumbered. This was not a party. It was a kangaroo court, and I had already been found guilty. They did not want the truth. They wanted the narrative that suited them. The narrative that gave them access to the money. I did not say another word. I did not try to argue. I did not reach into my purse and pull out the signed, notarized, and verified medical documents. It would not matter. They would just call them fake, too. I just turned around. I picked up my handbag from the chair I had been sitting in, and I started walking. "That's right, run away!" Chloe screamed after me, her voice muffled by my mother's shoulder. "Run away, you jealous witch!" "Simone, you get back here!" my father yelled. "You apologize to your sister. This family is not done with you." I kept walking. I walked through the side gate, past the silent, staring valet, and down the suburban street to my car. As I fumbled for my keys, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold them, I heard my father's voice, lower now, comforting Chloe, coming from the backyard. "Don't you worry, sweetheart," he said, his voice carrying on the afternoon air. "We will handle this. We will get our lawyers. That witch isn't going to get one single penny of our grandson's money." I got in my car and locked the doors. It was not just Chloe. It was not just Ryan. It was all of them. My entire family had just chosen a lie, a fraud, over me. I was completely and totally alone. The drive back to Chicago was a blur. I do not remember the traffic on the expressway. I do not remember the streets I took to get home. I just remember the feeling. A cold, heavy numbness that settled deep in my bones. It was worse than grief. Grief was a loss. This was a theft. My family, my own family, had looked at my dead husband's memory and seen a winning lottery ticket. They had chosen a clumsy, transparent lie over me, their own daughter, their own sister. The betrayal was so absolute, so complete, that my mind could not fully grasp it. I kept hearing my father's voice echoing in my head. Our grandson's money. He had processed the lie, accepted it, and claimed ownership of it in less than 60 seconds. I parked in the underground garage, my hands shaking so much I fumbled with the key fob. The elevator ride up to the penthouse felt like an ascent from a dark, cold grave. When the doors opened into our apartment, the silence hit me like a physical blow. It was empty, so empty. But it was my empty. It was our empty. I walked past the stacks of Marcus's boxes, the ones I still had not found the strength to open, and went straight to the bar. I poured a glass of whiskey, his favorite, and walked to the massive floor-to-ceiling windows. Chicago glittered below, a sea of indifferent lights. I saw his reflection next to mine in the glass. Not really, but I felt him. I felt his anger. "They're trying to take it, Marcus," I whispered to the empty room. "They're trying to take us and turn it into something dirty." My hand went to my purse, pulling out the medical records, the proof, the truth. But the truth had not mattered back there. They did not want the truth. They wanted the money. I knew I could not fight them alone. They would use the family, the emotion, the guilt. They would tear me apart. I needed someone who was immune to their brand of poison. I needed the one person Marcus had trusted more than anyone in the world. I found my phone. It was lit up with notifications, flashing angrily. I scrolled past Mom. I scrolled past Dad. I scrolled past Chloe. I found the name I was looking for. David Chen. Marcus's lawyer, his mentor, his friend. I pressed call. He answered on the first ring, at 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, as if he knew. His voice was calm, steady, cutting through my panic. David, it's Simone. They're trying to steal everything." I explained it all in a breathless rush. The party, the announcement, the baby, the fake will. I sounded hysterical, broken. David just listened. When I finally finished, there was no surprise in his voice. "I've been expecting your call, Simone." I froze. "What? You knew?" "Marcus knew," he said, his voice hard. "He knew your family, he knew their greed, he knew your sister. He told me, when I'm gone, David, they won't even wait for the body to get cold. They'll come for her. And you need to be ready." I sank onto the sofa, the phone pressed hard against my ear. "They have a will, David. A fake one. They're claiming Chloe's son is his." "Let them," David said, his voice sharp. "Let them make their claims. Let them file their fake documents." Marcus prepared for this exact scenario. He was a brilliant man, and he was very, very thorough. A spark of something, not hope, but fight, ignited in my chest. "What do I do?" "You do nothing," David commanded. "You do not speak to them. You do not answer their calls. You do not respond to their texts. You are a grieving widow, and you are not to be disturbed. You will come to my office tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. We have work to do. And Simone? Yes? Marcus was very clear. We don't just defend, we attack. I hung up the phone. The numbness was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp anger. I looked at my phone. It was exploding. 17 missed calls, 10 from my mother, 7 from my father, a dozen unread texts. I clicked on the first voicemail, my mother's voice, not kind, not concerned, but furious. Simone, you pick up this phone right now. How dare you embarrass your father like that? You owe your sister an apology. You are tearing this family apart. I deleted it. I clicked the next one. My father. His voice was cold, threatening. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but it's over. Joseph is furious. You are making this worse for yourself. You call Chloe and you apologize. You will accept this will, or you will find out what it means to be truly disowned. I laughed. Disowned? They thought that mattered now? They thought they had any power left? I turned the phone completely off. The sudden silence in the penthouse was a relief. I walked back to the window and looked out at the city. I held the whiskey glass up to the light. You knew, I whispered, a small grim smile touching my lips. You knew they would do this, didn't you, my love? You brilliant, paranoid, wonderful man. I took a long, slow sip. So, what did you leave for me, Marcus? What did you prepare? The next morning, I bypassed my own firm and took a cab straight to David Chen's office in the heart of the financial district. His law firm, Chen and Associates, occupied the top 3 floors of a glass and steel skyscraper. The lobby was minimalist and intimidating, all marble and brushed steel. It was the kind of place that whispered power. I had only been here once before, with Marcus, when he was setting up his estate. He had joked that David's office was the only place that made him feel underdressed. Today, I just felt small. My simple black dress, the same one from the party, felt like a costume. I was exhausted, having not slept, but the cold anger had solidified into a hard, sharp resolve. David's secretary, a woman with an impossibly sleek bun, greeted me by name. Mrs. King, David is expecting you. Please go right in. David Chen was exactly as I remembered him, 50 years old, impeccably dressed in a custom suit, his face sharp and intelligent. He did not smile when I entered. He stood, rounded his massive mahogany desk, and gave my arm a firm, supportive squeeze. Simone, I am so sorry for what you are going through. Please, sit. His office was vast, with a view that spanned the entire city, from the lake to the suburbs. Coffee? He asked. I shook my head, my stomach twisting. David, they have a will. I expected as much, he said, sitting opposite me, all business. Show me. I took out my phone and handed it to him, showing him the picture I had taken of the document Ryan had brandished. My hand was shaking slightly. David took the phone and studied the image for a long, quiet moment. He enlarged the signature, then swiped to the next page, reading the text. Finally, he looked up, and for the first time, a small, humorless smile touched his lips. An amateur, he said, handing the phone back to me. A very, very stupid amateur. What do you mean? I asked. It looked real enough. My parents believed it. Your parents wanted to believe it, David corrected gently. A court would laugh this out of the room in 5 minutes. Look. He took the phone back. First, the signature. It's scanned. You can see the pixelation around the edges where it was lifted from another document. Marcus's real signature has a variable pressure that a scan can't replicate. Second, the font. This main body text is Times New Roman. Marcus's legal documents, all of them, are set in Garamond. He was a creature of habit. And third, he pointed to the bottom of the page, the notary. John Smith, State of Illinois. This is my favorite part. John Smith is not a registered notary in the state of Illinois. And even if he were, the stamp is digitally misaligned with the text. It's a template they downloaded from the internet, Simone. It's trash. Hearing his calm, professional dismantling of their proof felt like my first real breath in 24 hours. So, it's not legal. It's not just not legal, David said, leaning forward. It is evidence. It proves conspiracy and intent to defraud the estate. Your sister and her husband did not just make a claim. They manufactured a fraudulent document to support it. They have crossed a line from a civil dispute into a felony. I should have felt better, but I just felt tired. It doesn't matter if it's fake, David. My family believes it. My father called me a brother. He said I was stealing from a baby. They are going to fight me. They will drag this out. They will tell everyone Marcus had an affair. They will ruin his name and mine. No, David said. His voice was not loud, but it cut through my rising panic. They won't, because they are bringing a children's drawing to a gunfight. And Marcus built an arsenal. He swiveled in his chair and turned to the large, secure safe built into the wall behind his desk. He spun the dial, opened the heavy door, and pulled out a thick, leather-bound portfolio. He placed it on the desk between us with a heavy, definitive thud. Your family thinks they have a piece of paper, David said. What we have is the last will and testament of Marcus King. Signed, witnessed by 2 of my partners, and videotaped in this very room 6 months ago. He untied the ribbon and opened the portfolio. Now, he said, sliding the first page toward me, let's talk about what your husband really wanted. I pulled the document closer. The paper was heavy, expensive. And there, at the bottom of the last page, was his signature. Sharp, confident, undeniably real. The M was perfect. Marcus was very clear, David began. He left a few personal items to his university, a small donation to a tech incubator he admired, but the bulk of the estate, he divided it simply. I read the lines, my eyes blurring. He structured it as follows, David explained. 90% of his entire estate, valued at approximately $45 million, is left to his beloved wife, Simone King. I choked back a sob, my hand covering my mouth. David continued. The remaining 10%, approximately $5 million, is to be placed in a charitable trust, the King Foundation, to be administered by you, Simone, funding STEM education for inner-city children and technology grants for women of color. He looked at me, his eyes soft for the first time. He left you everything, Simone. The company, the stocks, the penthouse, the accounts, everything. It is all yours. They cannot touch a single dollar of it. I finally let the tears come. Tears of relief, of overwhelming grief, of a profound, aching love for the man who had, even in death, protected me. He had secured my future. He had left me in charge of his legacy. It was done. They had lost. I wiped my eyes. Thank you, David. This is everything I needed to hear. I started to gather my things, a massive weight lifted from my shoulders. Please, David said, holding up a hand. Don't go just yet. Sit down. I looked at him, confused. Why? You said it's all here. It's done. David Chen leaned back in his chair, a slow, dangerous smile spreading across his face. Oh no, he said. That's not even the best part. You see, Marcus was very careful. I sat there, my mind trying to catch up. I had the will, I had the money, I had the charitable foundation. It was all there, ironclad, signed by Marcus. But David, I said, my voice still shaky, what does that matter? They have their own will. They'll just say mine is the fake one. They'll say I'm the liar. They'll drag his name through the mud for months, maybe years. My father, he'll back her. He'll spend every dollar he has to prove I'm a bitter, childless widow trying to steal from a baby. David just watched me. He let my panic fill the room for a moment, let my fears hang in the air. Then he slowly, deliberately, reached for another folder. This one was different from the pristine leather portfolio that held the will. This one was a thick, accordioned file, bound in red, with the words, "Personal and Confidential," stamped across the front in stark black letters. He placed it on the desk with the same quiet finality as the will, but this felt heavier. "Simone," he said, his voice low. "Marcus knew your family. We talked about it often. He knew your father's obsession with legacy and a grandson, and he especially," David paused, "he especially knew your sister, Chloe. He knew she has spent her entire life wanting exactly what you have." "But how could he know this?" I whispered. "How could he possibly predict she would claim this, that she would invent a child?" "He didn't know the exact scenario," David said, his fingers resting on the red folder. "He didn't need to. He knew her character, he knew her greed, and he knew that after he was gone, she would see you as weak, and she would see his estate as an opportunity. So, he wanted to leave you with a weapon. Not just a shield, like the will, but a sword. Something so powerful, so absolute, that no court in the land could ever side with her. He called this his truth protocol." His hand opened the red file. "This," he said, "is not just the medical record from Northwestern Hospital." He slid a single crisp document across the gleaming mahogany. "This is the initial surgical report for his vasectomy, performed 5 years and 2 months ago." He slid another paper over. "This is the follow-up lab report, 1 month post-operative. Total sperm count, 0. He slid another. "And this, Simone, is a second opinion. A full panel from a specialist at Johns Hopkins, 6 months after the procedure, confirming the vasectomy was permanent and irreversible." He added another. "And a third, from the Mayo Clinic just last year, during his annual physical, which he insisted on having independently verified. 0 sperm count." He stacked the last one on top. "Not low, not ineffective, 0. I picked up the papers. My hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was the cold, methodical precision of it all. I knew, of course I knew, about the vasectomy. It was a decision we had made. But I had never seen this. This was not a medical file. This was an arsenal. As I held the top page, the sterile white paper cold to the touch, the memory of that decision washed over me. It was not a vague, distant thought. It was sharp, clear, and painful. I was back in our kitchen 2 years before. Marcus had just returned from his father's funeral, a man taken at 52 by a sudden, catastrophic heart attack. Marcus had been staring out the penthouse window for almost an hour, not moving. "I can't," he finally whispered. I came up behind him, wrapping my arms around his waist. "Can't what, my love?" He turned in my arms, and his eyes, his beautiful, vibrant eyes, were filled with a terror I had never seen before. "I can't pass this on, Simone. This genetic time bomb. I watched it take him. I will not do that to a child. I will not do it to you. I will not make you watch that." "Hey," I said, putting my hands on his chest, right over his heart. "Look at me. We don't need a child to be a family. You and I, we are a universe. We are enough." "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I know how much you—" "I have never been more sure of anything," I said. "We are enough." He had held my face in his hands. "I'm scheduling the consultation," he said. "It's permanent." "I know," I whispered back, "and I love you for it." The memory faded, leaving an ache in my chest. I was back in David's office, holding the cold proof of that loving decision. Chloe had taken that moment of love and sacrifice, and twisted it into a cheap, greedy, disgusting lie. An anger, pure and cold, settled over me. I looked up at David. He knew. He knew someone would try to say it wasn't real. But David, why? This is overwhelming. The will is ironclad. This medical file makes her claim impossible. Why did he need to be so careful? David Chen leaned forward, and for the first time, I saw a glint in his eye that was not just professional, it was personal. Because, he said, Marcus knew that disproving the lie was only the first step. The second step was punishing the liar. He tapped the original leather-bound will still sitting on the desk. He knew Chloe, and he prepared for the final punch. I was still staring at the medical files. The proof, the undeniable, objective truth. David, I don't understand, I said, my voice shaking. If Marcus knew Chloe was like this, why would he even mention her in the will? Why give her anything at all? Why leave money for Leo? He knew Leo wasn't his. Why? The question hung in the air. It felt like a betrayal, a strange, final twist. It almost feels like he was encouraging her. David leaned forward, and the faint, dry smile I had seen earlier returned. But this time it was sharper. Because, Simone, Marcus wasn't just a brilliant businessman. He was a brilliant strategist. He didn't just want to protect you. He wanted to give Chloe, in his own words, exactly enough rope to hang herself with. He tapped the thick, leather-bound will still sitting on his desk. Please, he said, turn to Section 12, Clause 4. I opened the document, my fingers tracing the heavy cotton paper. He had a private name for it, David said, his voice laced with the memory of his friend. He called it the Chloe Contingency Fund. My eyes scanned the dense legal text. You see, David began to explain, Marcus was, despite all the evidence, a generous man. He knew Chloe was, let's call it, financially irresponsible. He knew your parents enabled her. He didn't want her to be destitute, and he didn't want her to be a permanent financial burden on you after he was gone. So, he allocated $1 million to her, to be held in trust and paid out in yearly installments. I looked up, stunned. $1 million? For her? After how she treated him? After how she treated us? Wait, David said, holding up a single finger. There's more. He also established a separate $1 million educational trust for her son, Leo. What? The word exploded out of me. It was a raw, wounded sound. He left money for Leo? The child she... David, that makes it look like he knew. Like he was admitting it. How could he do that to me? No, David said, his voice sharp and immediate, cutting through my anger. That's the bait, Simone. That's what she would think. That's what your greedy, opportunistic family would think. They would see those two items, her name and her son's name, and think he felt guilty. They would see it as an admission of paternity. He pointed to the page. Now, read the clause. Read Section 12, Clause 4, out loud. I found the section. My voice was trembling, but I read. Any beneficiary named herein who directly or indirectly challenges, contests, or otherwise disputes the validity of this will, or any part of this will. I paused, my eyes scanning the next line. Or who makes any, my voice faltered, any fraudulent claim against my estate, or against my wife, Simone King. My blood ran cold. I continued reading, my voice barely a whisper. Shall be deemed to have predeceased me for all purposes of this will, and any and all inheritance designated for said beneficiary, and for the descendants of said beneficiary, shall be immediately revoked, nullified, and voided, and shall revert to the residual estate. I looked up from the page, my mind racing, the pieces clicking into place with a terrifying, beautiful precision. I looked at David, my eyes wide. Oh, my... God, I whispered. The party, her standing up at the party, was a challenge, David confirmed, his face grim. Her demanding half the estate was a dispute, he nodded. And the fake will? I asked, my voice trembling with the sheer, cold brilliance of my husband's plan. The claim that Leo was his son? Was, David said, leaning back in his chair. A fraudulent claim against the estate and against you. The two triggers Marcus specifically laid out. I did the math in my head, the breath leaving my body. So, by standing up at that party, by being exactly the greedy, short-sighted, desperate person he knew she was, she didn't just lose her $1 million. No, David said, shaking his head slowly. Read the clause again. And for the descendants of said beneficiary. She also lost Leo's $1 million educational trust. The one Marcus left for him, purely out of the goodness of his heart, knowing he wasn't his. She lost both, I whispered. She did it to herself. She just, David finished, his voice flat, set $2 million on fire. For absolutely nothing. I sat back stunned, back. The weight of the medical files, the fake will, the family's betrayal, it all felt different now. It was not just a tragedy, it was a failed heist, a trap, perfectly set, that my sister had walked right into, led by her own greed. $2 million, I said, trying the words out. She threw away $2 million. Which brings us, David said, steepling his fingers, his professional demeanor returning, to the obvious next question. A person doesn't pull a stunt that clumsy, that high risk, that stupid, unless they are spectacularly desperate. She didn't just want the money, she needed it. He looked at me, his eyes sharp. So Simone, our next move is clear. We need to find out why. Why did she need the money now? I left David Chen's office just after noon. The Chicago wind whipped around the skyscraper, but I did not feel the cold. I felt hot. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in my gut, but now it was surrounded by a white-hot, clarifying anger. They had done this. Chloe, my parents, they had stood in a circle and lied. They had tried to paint Marcus as a cheater and me as a fool. And they had done it for money. The $2 million Chloe had burned was just the start. My husband's brilliant, posthumous trap had worked, but it was not enough. Disinheriting them was not enough. I wanted them exposed. I wanted the truth to burn their perfect, traditional, suburban lives to the ground. I did not go home. I went to the address David had given me, a nondescript office building in the West Loop. No marble here, just old brick and a shaky elevator. The frosted glass on the door said, Williams Investigations. I walked in. The office was cluttered, smelling faintly of stale coffee. A woman in her 50s, with sharp eyes and hair in tight professional braids, looked up from her computer. She was a strong black woman, the kind who looked like she had seen everything twice and was not impressed by any of it. You must be the grieving widow, she said. Her voice was rough, like gravel. I'm Keisha Williams. David Chen said you'd be stopping by. I sat down in the worn chair opposite her desk. David explained the situation? Keisha leaned back, tapping a pen on her desk. He gave me the highlights. Your sister's a snake. But snakes are lazy. They always leave a trail. So, Mrs. King, what exactly do you want to find? This was not David's polished sympathy. This was business. I appreciated it. They think I'm weak, I said, my voice hardening. They think I'm just a sad, childless widow they can roll over. They're wrong. I want to know everything. Why is Chloe so desperate for money? She and Ryan have always lived beyond their means, but this is a new level. Debt's a hell of a motivator, Keisha noted. What else? The baby, Leo. I want to know who the real father is. My husband was sterile, but her husband Ryan was standing right beside her, backing up the lie. Why? Is he stupid or is he in on it? And if he's in on it, who does the baby actually belong to? You think he knows he's not the father? Keisha asked. I think he knows Marcus isn't the father, but I'm not sure he knows he isn't the father either. Chloe is... She collects secrets, and she lies as easily as she breathes. I want irrefutable proof, Keisha. I want something that will end this, permanently. Keisha stared at me for a long moment. I met her gaze. I was not the broken woman from the party. I was a client. All right, she said, nodding slowly. I like you. You've got fire. Most people come in here crying. You came in ready for war. She stood up. Irrefutable proof. I can do that. It'll cost you. My rates are high. I can afford it, I said, thinking of the $45 million Marcus had left me. Good. Go home, Mrs. King. Turn off your phone. Let your family spin their little webs. I'll call you when I have something real. I tried to follow her advice. I went home to the penthouse, but the isolation was broken by a new kind of assault. The phone started ringing. This time, it was not just my parents. It was my Aunt Clara from Atlanta. Simone, honey, your mother just called me. She is worried sick about you. I'm fine, Aunt Clara. Are you, dear? Lena said, well, she said you're not yourself since Marcus passed, that you're confused. She said you're trying to keep all the money and you're lashing out at poor Chloe. Simone, that baby is Marcus's only son. How can you deny that child his birthright? I hung up. My hands were shaking. Poor Chloe. My mother was already painting the narrative. Another call. My uncle. Then a cousin. The story was the same. Simone is mentally unstable from grief. She's hoarding the money. She's denying Marcus's child. They were poisoning the well, turning the entire extended family against me before I had even spoken a word. I was blocking their numbers one by one when the doorbell buzzed. It was a courier. He handed me a long, white, important-looking envelope. It was from Reynolds and Dunn, a law firm I did not recognize. I tore it open. It was a formal letter from Chloe's new lawyer. We hereby demand that you cease all access to the assets of the late Marcus King, pending a court hearing to establish the paternity of his heir, Leo Miller. We are filing an immediate motion to freeze the estate. They were actually doing it. They were taking me to court. I picked up my phone and called Keisha. She answered on the first ring. They think they're going to win, I said, my voice low and cold as I stared at the legal threat. They've filed a motion to freeze the estate. They actually, truly believe their fake will and their fake story is going to work. I heard Keisha chuckle on the other end. Let them. Judges don't like being lied to, Mrs. King. They take it personally. I don't want to just win in court, Keisha, I said. I want to end this. So please, find me something. Find me something that makes them lose everything. I spent the next 48 hours in a strange, cold limbo. The legal motion to freeze the estate was a bold move, a scare tactic. David had assured me it would not hold up, but it still felt violating. My phone continued to light up with calls from numbers I did not recognize, extended family, all of them calling to tell me how appalled they were by my selfishness. My mother's smear campaign was working. I was the monster. I was the unstable widow. Chloe, the grieving mother of Marcus's only son, was the victim. I let them talk. I saved the voicemails. I was in the middle of a sleepless night staring at the Chicago skyline when my phone buzzed with a text from an unlisted number. I have it. Just 3 words. It was Keisha. The next morning I was back in her cluttered office. The smell of stale coffee was almost comforting. Keisha did not waste time on pleasantries. She slid a thick folder across the desk. You were right, she said. They're not just greedy. They're drowning. She flipped open the folder. The first page was a photo of Ryan, my brother-in-law, the handsome, charming white man my parents adored because he came from good stock. In the photo, he was not smiling. He was on a sidewalk, yelling into his phone, his face pale and sweaty. Ryan Miller, Keisha began, tapping the photo. Likes to gamble, a lot. Started with online poker, graduated to high-stakes sports betting. He's good, but not as good as he thinks. She turned the page, a credit report. The numbers were staggering. He's leveraged everything, Keisha said. Took out a second mortgage on their house, the house your parents helped them buy. He told Chloe it was for an investment opportunity. The investment, Keisha continued, was a guaranteed win on the Super Bowl. He lost. She slid another document over. This one was less official. It was a printout of text messages, threatening and misspelled. He didn't just borrow from the bank, he borrowed from the wrong people, a loan shark in Vegas, a man they call Benny G. Ryan owes him $300,000, cash, and he owes it by next Friday. My blood ran cold. Next Friday? That's 9 days. 9 days, Keisha confirmed. Benny G isn't the kind of guy who files paperwork. He's the kind who sends men to collect. And that's just the start. The bank officially started foreclosure proceedings on their house 2 days ago. They are going to lose everything. Ryan was a dead man walking. I stared at the files. This was the man my father was protecting, the man who was supporting my sister. So, Chloe knew? Oh, she knew, Keisha said with a dry laugh. She turned the page again. Which brings us to Mrs. Miller. She's got her own problems. She showed me the credit card statements, American Express Platinum, Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus. Your sister likes to shop, Keisha stated. A lot. She's got just shy of $100,000 in high-interest credit card debt, spread across 6 different cards. I scanned the itemized lists. Handbags that cost more than my first car, trips to Cabo she had posted on Instagram, claiming Ryan's company had paid for them. And then I saw it. A charge from 8 months ago, $10,000. The Beverly Hills Wellness Clinic. Wellness clinic? I asked. Plastic surgeon, Keisha said flatly. A mommy makeover she told her friends was a gift from a grateful client at her non-existent marketing job. I sank back in my chair. It was all there. The lies, the desperation. The house of cards was not just shaking, it was in free fall. They were going to be homeless. Ryan was going to be, well, worse than homeless. My God, I whispered. It wasn't just greed. It was panic. They were cornered. Exactly, Keisha said. They were cornered. And then, like a miracle from heaven, your husband died. Marcus's $50 million estate wasn't just an opportunity for them to get rich. It was their only lifeline. It was the only way to pay off Benny G, stop the foreclosure, and clear Chloe's debts in one clean shot. They had to make that claim. They had no other choice. I processed this. The cruelty made sense now. The audacity. The willingness to lie so publicly, so monstrously. It was the frantic, sloppy work of 2 people about to lose everything. So Ryan was in on it, I said, thinking aloud. He knew he was in debt, so he let Chloe lie and say the baby belonged to Marcus. I stopped. A new thought, cold and sharp, cut through the rest. Wait, Keisha, you said Ryan has been lying to Chloe about his investments. Chloe has been lying to Ryan about her spending. They're both drowning, but why would Ryan agree to a lie that claims his wife had an affair? Why would any man? I looked at Keisha. Does he even know the baby isn't his? Keisha Williams looked up from her file, and that professional, grim expression on her face finally broke. A slow, satisfied smile spread across her lips. Ah, she said. Now that is the interesting part. I was still staring at the financial reports, at the stark black and white numbers that proved just how desperate my sister and her husband were. So Ryan was desperate, I said, thinking aloud. He needed the money to save his own skin. That's why he would stand there, in front of everyone, and let Chloe say she had an affair with my husband. It was never about love or family. It was about paying off a loan shark named Benny G. I shook my head, the sheer grubby desperation of it all making me feel sick. But Keisha, I said, looking up, I still don't understand his side of it. Why would he go along with that lie? Why would any man agree to say his wife's child belonged to another man, especially one who's dead? Keisha's smile, that slow, satisfied smile I was coming to appreciate, returned. Ah, she said, that is the interesting part. You're wondering why Ryan was so sure the baby wasn't his, right? Why he was so willing to assign paternity to Marcus. Yes, I said. It doesn't make sense. Unless he knew he wasn't the father either. He did know, Keisha said simply. She turned to a different section of her meticulously organized file. She slid another document across the desk. It was not a financial report. It was a medical file. Because Ryan Miller, Keisha said, tapping the paper, is sterile. And unlike your husband who chose it, Ryan's is genetic. He was diagnosed with a condition when he was 20. He has known for his entire adult life that he can never, ever have children. I just stared at the paper. The world tilted again. He's sterile too? As a rock, Keisha confirmed. And this is the best part. I ran a check on their marriage license. There's no prenup, but I did talk to a source, a friend of Chloe's from her old yoga studio. Chloe knows. Ryan told her about his condition before they got married. I tried to piece this together. My mind was spinning. Wait, if he's sterile and she knows he's sterile, but they have a baby, then Ryan knows Leo isn't his. He knows she had an affair. Bingo, Keisha said. He knows she cheated. He just does not care. Or rather, he cares more about the $300,000 he owes Benny G. This isn't just Chloe's plan, Mrs. King. This is a conspiracy between the two of them. They are both liars, and they are using each other, and they were planning to use your dead husband to get out of the massive hole they dug for themselves. So Ryan was fully complicit, I whispered, the scale of the deception making me sick. He knew Leo was another man's child, and he was perfectly willing to stand there at that party and let Chloe claim the baby belonged to Marcus. All to get his hands on the inheritance to save himself. He's more than complicit, Mrs. King. He's a key player. He needs that $50 million or $20 million or whatever he can get, just as much as she does. He needs Marcus's money to save his own life from that loan shark. I leaned back in the chair, my mind spinning. The layers of lies. Chloe was lying to our family about Marcus. Ryan was lying to our family about Marcus. Chloe had lied to Ryan about who she cheated with, or maybe he just didn't care. It was a house of cards built on pure desperation. So, I finally asked, who is it? Who is the real father? The one they're both hiding. Keisha looked down at her file. This part was almost too easy, she said. Your sister is not subtle. She's been seeing the same man 3 times a week for the last year. Always paying in cash, but I got a look at the gym's sign-in sheets and the hotel receipts. She slid a photograph across the desk. It was not a grainy surveillance shot. It was a glossy printout from an Instagram profile. A man, muscular, handsome, and at least 10 years younger than Chloe, was posing shirtless in a gym mirror. The geotag read, Chicago Fitness Pros. His name is Dante, Keisha said. He's 25 years old. He's a personal trainer at the high-end gym Chloe joined last year. According to my source, she started private sessions with him almost immediately. He's been seen leaving her house during the day when Ryan is at meetings. He was even spotted driving her car. I looked at the picture of this boy. This was the father of the child my family was trying to pass off as Marcus's heir. This was the man Chloe cheated on her sterile husband with. This was the center of the whole sordid, pathetic lie. So Chloe lied to our entire family, I summarized, my voice flat and cold. Ryan lied to my parents. They both lied about Marcus. And they did it all to pay off gambling debts and credit cards. That's the shape of it, Keisha said. I sat there for a long time. I looked at the file on Ryan's sterility, the file on Ryan's debts, the file on Chloe's debts, the picture of Dante. And in my briefcase, I had the file on Marcus's vasectomy, and the file with Marcus's real will, the one with the no contest clause. I had every single piece. I had the motive. I had the medical proof, from both sides. I had the real will. And I had the trap Marcus had set. Keisha watched me, waiting. So, Mrs. King, she asked, what's the play? I stood up and put the new files into my briefcase, zipping it shut. The click of the zipper felt final. The grieving widow was gone. Thank you, Keisha. You've given me exactly what I needed. Send your bill to David Chen. He'll take care of it. I walked to the door. What's the play? I repeated her question. I turned back to look at her, a cold smile touching my lips for the first time. I'm going to call David, and he is going to schedule a family meeting. I left Keisha's office and walked out into the bright Chicago afternoon. The city felt different. I felt different. I was not a victim anymore. I was a woman holding a briefcase full of dynamite. The lies, all of them. Ryan's sterility, Chloe's affair with the trainer, the Vegas loan shark, the foreclosure. It was a symphony of desperation, and I was the conductor now. I replayed the plan with David in my head. We would call their lawyer in the morning, schedule a pre-litigation conference, and dismantle them piece by piece. But as I rode the elevator up to the penthouse, my hands were steady. For the first time since Marcus died, I was not shaking. The elevator doors opened directly into my foyer, and they were just there, standing in the middle of my living room, as if they owned the place. My mother, Lena, and my father, Joseph. They must have bribed the doorman again, the way they used to when they wanted to surprise me, which usually meant criticizing my housekeeping. My mother rushed forward, her face a mask of practiced anguish. Simone, oh thank God, we've been so worried, you turned off your phone, we thought. She tried to grab my hands, but I stepped back, setting my briefcase down on the marble table between us. What are you doing here? I asked. My voice was flat. It did not have the warmth they were used to, or the fear they expected. Simone, please, Lena began, the real tears starting now. You are tearing this family apart. Chloe? Oh, Simone. Chloe is a complete wreck. She hasn't stopped crying since the party. She's beside herself with grief. And your father, he hasn't slept in 2 days. You cannot do this to us. You cannot do this to her. My father, Joseph, stepped forward, his face hard. He always hated my mother's emotional displays. He preferred clean, sharp cruelty. That's enough, Lena. This isn't about feelings. This is about facts. He looked at me, his gaze cold. Let's be realistic, Simone. I almost laughed. Realistic was the word they used at the party. You are a widow, he continued. A childless widow. Your sister has a son, Marcus's son. That baby, Leo, is his only heir. He is the future of this family's bloodline, and he deserves his father's inheritance. Your performance at the party was disappointing, but we are willing to overlook it. Overlook it? Yes, he said, as if he was being generous. We are here to tell you to do the right thing. You will call your lawyer, David Chen, and you will instruct him to accept the will Chloe presented. You will retract this disgusting lie you invented about Marcus's vasectomy. And you will allow the estate to pass as it should to his son. I just looked at him. I looked at my father, the man who had dismissed my career, who had favored my sister, who was now standing in my dead husband's home, ordering me to accept a lie. I felt nothing, no fear, no guilt, just pity. No, I said. My mother's crying hitched. What? No, I repeated louder this time. I will not be retracting the truth. I will not be accepting a fraudulent document. And I will not be realistic. Now you listen to me, my father started, taking a step toward me. No, you listen to me, I said. My voice was not loud, but it echoed in the large, silent room. This is my home. You are here uninvited, and this is the last time you will ever speak to me this way. I walked to my desk and picked up my phone. I dialed David's number and put it on speaker. He answered instantly. David, I said, my parents are here. They are demanding I accept the fraudulent will. David's voice filled the room, cold and professional. Mr. and Mrs. Miller, I advise you to say nothing further. You are currently attempting to coerce a grieving widow, which is a very bad look in a fraud case. My father stopped, stunned. I was going to have David call you, I said, disconnecting the call. But since you're here, we can do this in person. I am advising you to be at David Chen's office tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. You will bring Chloe. You will bring Ryan. And you will bring that pathetic excuse for a lawyer you hired. My mother looked confused. What? What for? What are you talking about? We're going to have a conversation, I said. I picked up the red folder Keisha had given me. The one with Ryan's gambling debts, the one with Chloe's credit card bills, the one with her lover's Instagram photo, the one with Ryan's sterility report. We are going to discuss everything. You think you can threaten us? My father blustered, but his confidence was gone. He was looking at the folder in my hand. I'm not threatening you, Dad, I said. I'm giving you a choice. You can show up tomorrow and we can discuss just how quickly and quietly you are going to disappear from my life. Or, I can take this folder. I held it up. This folder full of actual proof, and I can walk it over to the Chicago Police Department. Fraud, conspiracy, attempted theft. I wonder how Benny G from Vegas will feel about all that publicity. Or Dante, the personal trainer. My father's face went white. My mother finally stopped crying. She just stared at me. The daughter they thought was so weak, so quiet, so easy to break was holding a weapon, and she knew exactly how to use it. 10 a.m., I said, walking to the penthouse door and holding it open. Don't be late. They looked at each other, their shared panic palpable. And for the first time in my life, I saw fear in their eyes. They realized, far too late, that they had not just underestimated me. They had underestimated Marcus. The next morning, the air in David Chen's conference room was so cold, it felt like a physical presence. The room was designed to intimidate, a long, dark mahogany table, sweeping 38th floor views of the Chicago skyline, and absolute expensive silence. I sat at the head of the table. David was on my right, and Keisha, the private investigator, was on my left. Keisha was not a lawyer, but I had insisted she be there. She just sat, staring, her hands folded on the table. She looked bored, which I found was somehow more terrifying than if she had looked angry. At 10:03, the door opened. My family entered. My father, Joseph, led the way, trying to look unimpressed by the surroundings. But I saw his eyes flick to the antique map on David's wall. My mother, Lena, came next, already dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, preparing her role as the aggrieved matriarch. Then came Chloe and Ryan, and the man who must be their lawyer, a man named Reynolds, who had a cheap suit and an overly confident smirk. They all sat down opposite us, a sad, unified front of greed. Reynolds shuffled his papers, a performative display of organization. He cleared his throat. Well, he began, trying to take charge, now that we are all here, let's get straight to the point. Mrs. King, he said, addressing me with a familiarity that made my skin crawl. My clients are the injured party here. Your sister, Chloe, is grieving the father of her child. Your parents are grieving their grandson's lost father. Instead of meeting them with the compassion one would expect, you have met them with, well, frankly, with hostility. David Chen slowly poured himself a glass of water, his movements deliberate, as if Reynolds was not even speaking. Keisha just continued her unnerving, neutral stare. Reynolds, ignoring the lack of response, pressed on. However, my clients are generous. They are willing to settle this matter privately, away from the public eye. We have, as you know, a valid, notarized will. We have the heir. We are prepared to go to court and prove paternity, which will be messy for everyone, especially for your late husband's reputation. I felt my hands clench in my lap. The threat. So here's our offer, Reynolds said, leaning forward. $20 million, transferred to a trust for Leo Miller. In exchange, my clients will sign a non-disclosure agreement, and this whole unpleasantness about Marcus's affair disappears. We all walk away. We all heal. It is the only sensible option. He sat back, his arms crossed, looking incredibly proud of himself. Chloe was looking at me, her face a mask of smug victimhood. My father nodded, as if the offer was a great kindness. A thick, heavy silence filled the room. I did not look at Reynolds. I did not even acknowledge that he had spoken. David continued to slowly sip his water. Keisha had not blinked. My gaze moved past my mother, past my father, past Chloe. I settled on Ryan, her husband, the man who had stood beside her at the party, the man who had backed her up. He was fidgeting with his cheap tie, clearly uncomfortable in this high-powered office. He looked at my father for support. Reynolds cleared his throat again, his confidence wavering. "Mrs. King, did you hear the offer?" I continued to stare at Ryan. He started to sweat, a small bead forming on his temple. David Chen spoke for the first time, his voice calm and precise. "My client heard your noise, Mr. Reynolds. She is simply unimpressed." I leaned forward, my hands flat on the table. My voice, when I spoke, was low, conversational. I was not speaking to the lawyer. I was not speaking to my parents. I was speaking only to Ryan. "Ryan," I said. He flinched, startled to be addressed. "What?" Chloe looked at me, annoyed. "What game are you playing, Simone? We're talking business here." My eyes never left Ryan's. He was looking at his lawyer, at my father, anywhere but at me. "Ryan, look at me." His eyes darted to mine, full of a strange, weak fear. "I have a simple question for you," I said softly. "It's a medical question. I hope you don't mind. I was just wondering, are you aware of your genetic condition? The one you were diagnosed with when you were 20? The blood drained from his face. His cheap suit suddenly looked 3 sizes too big. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. Chloe looked from him to me, confused. "What? What condition? Ryan, what is she talking about?" Ryan was shaking his head, a pathetic, jerky motion. I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" I asked, my voice still quiet, still kind. "I'm talking about the genetic condition, Ryan. The one that means you can't have children. The one that makes you sterile." The blood drained from Ryan's face. It was a sight to behold. He went from blotchy red to a sick, pasty gray in less than a second. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. Chloe, seeing his reaction, finally understood. She turned on him, her voice a high-pitched, panicked whisper. "Ryan? What is she talking about? Ryan? Tell her she's lying. Tell her!" Ryan just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing, but no sound came out. He looked absolutely terrified. Reynolds, their lawyer, sensing he was losing control of the narrative and his clients, slammed his hand on the table. "This is outrageous. It's completely irrelevant. This is a tactic. It's character assassination. We are here to discuss the valid will of Marcus King." "Oh, this is very relevant, Mr. Reynolds," David Chen said, his voice cutting through the room like a scalpel. "It goes directly to the credibility of your client's fraudulent claim, and to the paternity of the child he is claiming is an heir." I just nodded, almost sympathetically toward Keisha. Keisha, who had been sitting so still, slowly pushed her chair back. The sound scraped loudly in the silent room. She stood up, walked to the table, and dropped a thin file directly in front of Ryan. The sound it made on the mahogany was like a judge's gavel. "What?" Ryan stammered, his hands shaking so much he couldn't even reach for the file. "What is this?" "That," Keisha said, her voice flat and devoid of emotion, "is your complete medical history from the Illinois Men's Health Clinic, dating back 12 years. She tapped the cover with one long, clear polished fingernail. "Specifically, the test results from when you were 20, confirming your genetic condition, and the follow-up tests, one from 2 years ago, all of them." She leaned in, confirming 0 sperm count. "You are sterile, Ryan. You have known you were sterile since you were 20 years old." Chloe looked at this file, then at Ryan's gray face. The realization was dawning on her, slow and horrific. "Ryan?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He's lying, right? Ryan? Tell me he's lying." Ryan just stared at the file. He was trapped. You lied to me?" Chloe shrieked, her voice rising into an animalistic screech. "Our whole marriage? You knew? You let me believe you... She lunged at him, her hands clawed, trying to scratch his face. But my father, Joseph, grabbed her arm. "Chloe, stop it! What is going on?" "Oh, don't stop her, Dad," I said, leaning forward in my chair. "This is the best part." "But Chloe," I said, turning my gaze to her, "you really should save some of that rage, because he is not the only one in this room who lied." I turned my full attention to my sister. Her tear-streaked, furious face looked up at me. "He lied about being sterile," I said softly. "But you lied about everything else. You stood there, at your son's birthday party, and claimed Marcus was the father, and Ryan stood right next to you, backing you up. Why would he do that? Why would a husband let his wife claim her child belonged to another man?" I let the question hang in the air, heavy and toxic. "Unless," I continued, "he already knew the baby wasn't his, because he couldn't be, and he just didn't care who you pinned it on as long as it got him paid." Chloe froze, her mouth open, the accusation hanging in the air. "So, let's talk about the real father, shall we?" I asked, my voice still quiet. "The one you actually had the affair with. The one you've been hiding from your sterile husband. Or should we just call him by his name? Dante, your 25-year-old personal trainer." If the room was silent before, it was a tomb now. My mother, Lena, looked like she was going to faint, her hand pressed to her chest. Joseph's mouth was wide open. Ryan, seeing his own escape route, seeing that he was a victim too, rounded on Chloe. "Dante," he yelled, his voice cracking, "a personal trainer? You told me it was a mistake. You told me you didn't know who it was." "I had to," Chloe screamed back at him, her mask of the grieving victim completely gone, replaced by the cornered animal she was. "You're my husband. You were supposed to protect me. You were supposed to just go along with it." "Go along with what?" Ryan yelled, finally standing up. "Lying to your whole family? Claiming the kid belonged to your dead brother-in-law? You're insane." "I'm insane?" Chloe shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at him. "You're the one who owes $300,000 to a psycho in Vegas." "What?" My father, Joseph, finally found his voice. He looked at Ryan. "What did she say? Vegas?" Chloe clapped her hand over her mouth, realizing too late what she had just revealed. Ryan looked like he was about to pass out. "Chloe," my father said, his voice dangerously low, "what did you do?" I leaned back in my chair and took a sip of water. I nodded to David. My work here was almost done. "Oh, they lied about much more than that, Dad," I said, savoring the look of pure terror on their faces. "We haven't even gotten to the motive yet. David, why don't you show them the foreclosure notice?" My father, Joseph, looked like he had been physically struck. He stumbled back a step, staring at Ryan. 300,000? He whispered. Vegas? Ryan just stared at the floor, his face a mask of shame. And Chloe, I said, my voice relentless. You were right there with him, weren't you? Keisha, on cue, slid the next file onto the table. Chloe Miller, she read, her voice bored, as if reading a grocery list. Current outstanding credit card debt, $98,450, spread across 6 high-interest cards. Primary expenditures include, she flipped a page, handbags, vacations to Cabo, and a $10,000 charge to a Beverly Hills wellness clinic. My mother looked confused. A wellness clinic? Honey, I thought you said that trip was a spa weekend a client paid for? It was a plastic surgeon, Lena, I said flatly. A mommy makeover she couldn't afford. Keisha slid the final document onto the pile. It was a legal notice, stamped in red. And this, she said, is the foreclosure notice on their home. The bank filed it 2 days ago. They are 3 months behind on payments. They are, for all intents and purposes, completely broke. The room was silent. The full picture was finally clear, painted in stark, ugly numbers. My parents were not just accomplices to a lie. They were accomplices to a desperate, clumsy, pathetic con. Joseph and Lena finally understood. This was not a simple mistake. This was not a confused young mother grieving. This was a calculated, premeditated plot, born of sheer, terrifying desperation. My mother, Lena, turned to Chloe, her face, for the first time in my life, completely broken. The performance was gone. Chloe, she whispered, her voice trembling. You told me Ryan's investments were doing well. You said you were thinking of buying a bigger house. You lied to us? I had to lie, Chloe finally exploded. The tears were real now, hot and angry, streaming down her face. What was I supposed to say? That my husband is a degenerate gambler who owes $300,000 to a loan shark? That I haven't been able to pay my credit card minimums in 6 months? That we were about to be homeless? You wouldn't have helped me. You would have just judged me. We would have, my father started, his voice weak. You would have what? Chloe spat. Given me a lecture? Told me to be more like her? She pointed a shaking finger at me. Told me to be responsible like Simone? I needed money, not a lecture. So you decided to steal it from your grieving sister, I said, my voice quiet. You decided to forge a will and defame my dead husband's name. You saw Marcus's death not as a tragedy, but as a payday, as your lifeline. It was right there, she screamed. $50 million, and you don't even need it. You don't have kids. What are you even going to do with all that money? It's not fair. I have a son. I have problems. Yes, I said. You do. And you just made them so much worse. It doesn't matter, my father said, suddenly finding his voice again. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Simone, she's your sister. She made a terrible mistake. We can fix this. As a family. We can pay the debts. We can get them help. A mistake? I repeated. You're still calling this a mistake? Yes, my mother chimed in, grasping at this new straw. A terrible, desperate mistake. But she's our daughter. We can't let her go to jail, Simone. Please. I looked at them. My parents. Still trying to fix it. Still trying to smooth it over. To hide the ugliness under the rug of family. No, I said, my voice flat. You're wrong. You haven't even heard the worst part yet. There is one last lie. The one that proves this isn't a mistake. It's a choice. And it's the one that's going to cost you everything. The conference room was no longer a place of business. It was the scene of a detonation. My father, Joseph, was standing, pointing a shaking finger at Ryan, who had collapsed into his chair. You gambled? You brought this filth into my family? You used my daughter? Ryan just stared at the table, his face the color of ash. Their lawyer, Reynolds, was gathering his papers, trying to distance himself from the toxic fallout. He looked at David. This meeting is over. Sit down, Mr. Reynolds, David Chen said, his voice quiet but absolute. We are not finished here. My client has not finished. All eyes turned to me. My mother, Lena, saw her only escape route. She rushed from Chloe's side, not to me, but at me. She actually fell to her knees beside my chair. It was a disgusting, theatrical gesture. Simone, she wailed, grabbing my hand. Her rings felt cold. Simone, you see now. You see how desperate she was, how sick he is. She pointed at Ryan. This is not her fault. She's your sister, your only sister. You have to help her. You have $45 million. You can pay these debts. You can fix this. It's just money to you. My father, seeing the new strategy, joined in. His voice was lower, trying the rational approach. Your mother is right. This is what family does. We protect our own. We handle things internally. We will keep this quiet, Simone. We will take care of Ryan's problem. We will get Chloe help. And you will provide the funds. It's the only way. I looked down at my mother, kneeling at my feet, clinging to my hand. I looked at my father, trying to order me to clean up their mess. I slowly, deliberately pulled my hand away from my mother's grasp. Protect? I said. My voice was cold. You want to talk about protecting family? I looked at them, their desperate, greedy faces. Like you protected me? When I was a grieving widow? When I stood in my own home, broken, and you sided with her? With that lie? No. I am done protecting you. I am done cleaning up your messes. I turned my gaze to Chloe. She was watching me, her eyes wide with terror, finally realizing I held all the cards. You know the funniest part of all this, Chloe? I said, my voice almost conversational. The most pathetic part? Marcus knew you. He knew exactly who you were. He knew you were greedy and jealous and weak. He hated me, she whispered. No, I said. That's where you're wrong. He pitied you. He knew you were my sister, and he knew, even after all the awful things you did, that you were still family. So, in his real will, he left you money. A spark ignited in Chloe's dead eyes. Her head snapped up. What? Reynolds, the lawyer, froze on his way out the door. My parents stopped breathing. He did? Chloe asked, her voice trembling with a new, disgusting kind of hope. Oh yes, I said. He left you $1 million in a trust. The relief that washed over her face was sickening. $1 million, she breathed. Reynolds looked shocked. And, I continued, he even left money for your son, Leo. A $1 million educational trust, even knowing Leo wasn't his, even knowing you were you. He was a better person than any of us. He wanted your son to have a future, even if you didn't. Chloe actually let out a small sob of joy. $2 million, she whispered, looking at Ryan. Oh my God, Ryan, we're saved. You were saved, I said, my voice cutting through her relief like a razor. She froze. You were, I repeated. He left it for you. Past tense. I looked at David. David, would you please read Section 12, Clause 4, the one Marcus called the Chloe Contingency Fund? David Chen picked up the heavy, leather-bound will. He put on his reading glasses. His voice was loud, clear, and devastating. Any beneficiary, named herein, who directly or indirectly challenges, contests, or otherwise disputes the validity of this will or any part of this will. Chloe's face began to tighten. Wait, David continued, his voice rising. Or who makes any fraudulent claim against my estate or against my wife, Simone King? No, Chloe whispered, realizing. No, no, no. David's voice was merciless. Shall be deemed to have predeceased me for all purposes of this will, and any and all inheritance designated for said beneficiary, and for the descendants of said beneficiary, shall be immediately revoked, nullified, and voided, and shall revert to the residual estate. David closed the will. The thud of the leather cover was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Chloe stared at me, her eyes blank, not understanding the legal terms. What does that mean? She stammered. Voided? What does that mean? I leaned across the table. I looked right into her eyes, and I smiled. It means, I said, that when you stood up at that party, when you held up that fake will, when you tried to steal from me, you just personally set $2 million on fire. You get nothing. Your son gets nothing. You did this to yourself. The sound that came out of Chloe was not a word. It was a high, thin, strangled noise, like air escaping a punctured lung. Her face, which had been contorted with hope just moments before, crumpled. The realization hit her. Not just the loss of the potential $50 million, but the concrete, finalized loss of the $2 million Marcus had actually left her. The money that would have saved her house. The money that would have paid off her credit cards. She had it. In her grasp. And she had, in her own spectacular, greedy fashion, burned it all to the ground. No, she whispered, shaking her head, her eyes wide and blank. No, you're lying. You're lying. She turned desperately to her lawyer, Reynolds, who was staring at David Chen with a look of pure professional horror. Tell her she's lying, she shrieked. Tell her! Reynolds just shook his head, speechless, his smug confidence gone. But Ryan, her husband, was not looking at the will. He was looking at Keisha's folder, which was still open on the table. He was looking at the name, Benny G. He knew exactly what the loss of that $2 million meant. It was not just losing a future fortune. It was the immediate and violent end of his actual life. He stood up so abruptly his chair screeched and fell backward onto the plush carpet. I wasn't part of this, he stammered, pointing a shaking finger at Chloe. This was her idea. The will, the baby. It was all her. I just... He did not finish the sentence. He looked at my father, then at me, his eyes wide with animal panic. He saw no help. He looked at the door, and he ran. He physically bolted from the conference room, shoving the heavy oak door open and stumbling into the hallway. I had nothing to do with it, his voice echoed back down the marble corridor. She's crazy! It was all her! Reynolds, his lawyer, just watched him go. He slowly, deliberately, began packing his cheap briefcase. Well, he muttered to himself, it appears my services are no longer required. Chloe had collapsed, her face buried in her hands, making these horrible, gulping animal sounds of pure despair. My mother, Lena, was frozen, staring at the empty doorway where Ryan had been. But my father, Joseph, he did not look at Chloe. He turned and looked at me. His face was a dark, thunderous mask of rage. You, he whispered, his voice shaking. You did this. I met his gaze. My voice was as cold and calm as the glass on the table in front of me. I did nothing, I said. I just told the truth. Chloe did this to herself. And you? I looked at both my parents. You helped her. My mother finally snapped out of her shock. She rushed, not to me, but to Chloe, kneeling by her chair. Oh, my baby, she wept. Then she turned on me, her face twisted. What are we supposed to do now, Simone? What about that man, Benny G? He'll kill Ryan. He'll come after her, after Leo. She's going to lose the house. Simone, please! She got up and rushed to my side, grabbing my hand. Her rings felt cold. You have to help us. You have the money, $45 million. You can pay her debts, you can fix this, it's just money to you. She's your sister. My father, seeing the new strategy, joined in. His voice was lower, trying the rational approach. Your mother is right. This is what family does. We protect our own. We handle things internally. We will keep this quiet, Simone. We will take care of Ryan's problem. We will get Chloe help, and you will provide the funds. It's the only way. I looked down at my mother, kneeling at my feet, clinging to my hand. I looked at my father, trying to order me to clean up their mess. I slowly, deliberately, pulled my hand away from my mother's grasp. Protect? I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through my mother's sobbing. You want to talk about protecting family? I looked at them, their desperate, greedy faces. Like you protected me? When I was a grieving widow? When I stood in my own home, broken, and you sided with her? With that lie? No, I am done protecting you. I am done cleaning up your messes. I stood up slowly. As of this moment, all of this is not my problem. I turned to David Chen. David, I said, my voice clear and strong. Please report this fraudulent will to the State Bar Association. I want Mr. Reynolds investigated immediately for knowingly filing a fraudulent document and attempting to defraud an estate. Reynolds, who was almost at the door, froze. You can't, he stammered. That's privileged. It's fraud, David Chen replied, already making a note on a legal pad. And I will. Consider your career over, Mr. Reynolds. The lawyer fled the room, almost tripping over his own briefcase. I looked back at the three of them. My family. As for you, I said, I will not be pressing criminal charges for this conspiracy. I will not send Keisha's files to the Chicago Police Department. A tiny, pathetic spark of hope lit my father's eyes. Simone. On one condition, I continued, cutting him off. You never, ever contact me again. Not you. I pointed to my father. Not you. I pointed to my mother. And especially not you. I looked at Chloe. You will not call me. You will not email me. You will not show up at my home. You will not speak my name. As far as the world is concerned, starting today, I am an orphan. I no longer have a family. You can't, my mother wept. You can't just leave us. You left me first, I said. You left me the day my husband died. You left me when you chose her lie over my truth. You are on your own. I picked up my briefcase. It felt light. But the debts, my father yelled, a last desperate plea. Chloe! The house! Benny G! I paused at the door. I looked back at the ruins of my family. My mother, hysterical. My father, defeated. My sister, a broken, sobbing heap on the floor. That, I said, is not my problem. I walked out of the conference room and did not look back. 6 months. 6 months of silence. 6 months of rebuilding. I stood on a windswept hill overlooking Lake Michigan. The Chicago wind was cold, but I did not feel it. In front of me was not a conference room full of liars, but an open field of dirt and possibility. This was the construction site for the Marcus King Memorial Park. My project, my design, my funding. I had poured every bit of my energy, my grief, and my $45 million into this. It was the legacy he deserved, a legacy built on truth and community, not on the ashes of his reputation. The sound of bulldozers in the distance was a kind of music, the soundtrack of creation, not destruction. I had not spoken to my family since that day, not one word. I had meant what I said. I was an orphan. My new life was quiet, focused. I was healing, I was working. I had a new routine. I had dinners with David Chen and his wife. I reconnected with old friends who had been pushed aside by my family's demands. I was slowly, painfully building a new world. Then the email arrived. It was from a distant cousin in Atlanta, someone on the fringe of the family, someone who was not part of the inner circle of drama. I had not spoken to her in years. Simone, it read, I don't know if you've heard, and it's really not my place to gossip, but I thought you should know. I braced myself, my hand gripping the mouse. The email detailed the fallout of that day. Chloe and Ryan had, as expected, lost their house. The bank foreclosed 2 weeks after our meeting, but it was worse than that. The loan shark, Benny G, had not been patient. Ryan, in a final, predictable act of cowardice, had disappeared. He had emptied their joint account, what little was left, and just ran. He abandoned Chloe. He abandoned Leo. He was last seen on a security camera at a bus station in Nevada, and no one had heard from him since. And my parents? Joseph and Lena? According to my cousin, Benny G's associates did not care that Ryan was gone. They knew who his wealthy in-laws were. They started making calls, threatening calls. My father, terrified, his reputation in the community shattered, had done the only thing he could. He sold their large, beautiful home in Atlanta, the one he was so proud of, the symbol of his traditional success. He had liquidated almost everything he had spent his life building to pay off Ryan's $300,000 gambling debt, just to make the threats stop. The email concluded, they live in a small 2-bedroom apartment now, across town. Chloe and Leo are living with them. I saw your mother at the grocery store last week. She looked old. It's all just so sad. I closed the email. Sad. Yes, it was sad. But it was also just. It was the natural, inevitable consequence of their own choices. A cold, strange peace settled over me. As I was about to delete the message, my phone buzzed. The caller ID was a number I did not recognize, but the area code was Atlanta. My heart did not leap. It did not pound. I just looked at it. It was the first call from their city in 6 months. I let it ring twice, then answered. Hello? The line was silent for a moment. Then, my mother's voice. It was not her usual critical, high-pitched tone. It was small, hesitant. Simone? Is this a bad time? I'm at the site, I said, my voice neutral. Oh, she said. Another pause. I could hear my father muttering in the background as if giving her a script. We just wanted to, well, your father and I, we just wanted to know. Her voice cracked. The park, Simone. The one you're building for Marcus. We saw an article about it online. Is it beautiful? The question was so simple, so human. It was the first real question she had asked me about my life, my work, in maybe ever. I turned and looked at the blueprints clutched in my hand. I looked at the sweeping lines of the gardens, the water features, the quiet memorial grove where children would one day play. I smiled, a real, genuine smile. It's going to be beautiful, Mom. I heard her let out a shaky breath. Oh, that's good. I heard my father's voice again, louder this time. Tell her. Go on, Lena. Tell her. Simone? My mother said, her voice small and tight, as if she was about to cry. We're so proud of you. I'm proud of you. The words I had waited my entire 38 years to hear. The words I had chased, worked for, cried for. The words that had held so much power, they could build me up or destroy me. And now, standing here in the cold Chicago wind, building my husband's true legacy, I heard them. And I realized they didn't matter. Not anymore. They had no power over me. They were just words, spoken too late, by 2 broken people in a small apartment far away. My worth was not tied to their approval. It was here in the dirt. It was in the plans. It was in the truth. I have to go, Mom, I said gently. The foreman is waiting for me. Oh, yes, of course. We'll let you go. Goodbye, Simone. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up the phone. I did not feel anger or sadness or even forgiveness. I felt nothing, just peace. I turned off the ringer, put the phone in my pocket, and walked back toward the sound of the bulldozers. I had work to do. I was building a legacy of creativity and truth, not lies and greed. I was finally, completely free. The ultimate lesson from this story is that your worth is not defined by your toxic family's opinion. Simone was always seen as the lesser daughter, but her true value was recognized by her husband Marcus. While her family, led by Chloe, plotted to steal her inheritance using lies, Marcus had already protected her with the absolute truth. This story shows that actions driven by greed and deception ultimately lead to self-destruction. Chloe's attempt to gain 25 million resulted in her losing the 2 million she was originally left. True strength lies in integrity and knowing when to walk away from those who refuse to see your value. Have you ever been betrayed by family members driven by greed? Share your experience in the comments below.